Hello and welcome to Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we're going to be going over the results for the knife survey I put out a couple weeks. Should be pretty interesting. There's a lot of data here, so some of it you might just want to pause on some certain screens. Uh, I'll be talking about some of the important things, but you'll kind of see there's a lot of information here. We're not going to go over every little thing, but we'll try to pull out the really important stuff. So, first question: how long have you been in the knife hobby? Our biggest group here is the 1 to 2 years, which is kind of surprising. I thought that whatever this chart would be, it'd be going up or down or something. But this is kind of a peak and valleys type of thing. So we do have some new people in the first year or so. I think the biggest group by far, though, is this one. And then once you decide to stick into the hobby, I guess you're pretty consistent. You stay for a while, so that's kind of interesting. Next question: how many knives do you own right now? This one does gradually kind of go up a little bit. I'm really surprised at this one: 31 to 50. That's 20 people, good 27%. That's crazy. I thought we'd be more in this area, but this is why you have a survey, so you can kind of figure this stuff out. Very surprising. Next, now, this is the line share of the survey, which is kind of singling out because there's so many different things to want or not want in a knife for each price bracket. So this price bracket is the $75 to $150. And when you just kind of scroll through it like this, it's kind of mind numbing. But we'll go over some of the big ones here. People do like snappy detents, easy lock bar access. That's the disengage on my OCD, the D for disengage. The drop shut, that's like a guillotine. This one, I really wanted to figure out if people actually care about this. I called it the detent speed bump, which is to say the detent ball doesn't have a detent ball ramp where it kind of like hangs on the knife a little bit before, and then you have to push it past that detent speed bump in order for it to go down. Some people say they actively want that. I don't. Looks like I'm not alone. It looks cool. This is also one you're gonna see it on all the different categories, but it looking cool is actually really important to people apparently. So that's very interesting. No lock stick. People don't like that. Detent keeps the blade closed when it's in your pocket. So this is like a safety thing, kind of basic stuff. So even in our budget knives, we need the blade to stay in and not just fall out. Clips, no hot spots is pretty important to people. Doesn't look like we care what kind of clip it is on this price bracket, which is of note. Lanyard hole doesn't, I think what I say is it doesn't, yeah, displace the optimal clip placement. Basically saying, do we favor the placement of the lanyard hole or do we favor the placement of the clip? And this is saying, no, I prefer the clip to take precedent. So that's good. I like to see that out of people. Anyway, then from flipper all the way down to backlock, these are all different ways to open the knife. So really interesting kind of insight here. We don't like nail nicks. People probably don't know what the hot lock is. Liner lock is doing surprisingly well. I actually do like liner locks, and here I think we're tempering our expectations pretty good. We can't really expect a titanium frame lock at this price compared to something more traditional like a liner lock. Opening aperture is the strongest, most favorite option. Front flipper and back flipper. All right, let's keep an eye on this when we go to each price bracket. I think that's kind of interesting. Thumb studs are surprisingly up there. That must be like the Sebenza crowd or something. I don't know. It is very common in the knife industry. I'm just surprised we want it that much. And then this is thin blade stock versus thick, and then itemizing the thinness behind the edge. So the people that like thick blade stock are not necessarily the same people that want the thickness behind the edge. So I guess they're hoping for like a strong hollow grind, I guess, maybe. So they can get both thick blade stock but thin behind the edge. We care very much about even blade grind, no blade play. These are kind of the fundamentals of a knife. So even in this bracket, we want that. So very interesting. If we go here, we can kind of do it descended. Let's go descending. So no blade play is our winner. Keeps the detent, keeps the blade in stock, in the pocket. Snappy detent. So these are all like super basic stuff. As far as we get to like non-safety related, clip is easy to use. It looks cool. That's like 50% of people care about that. Anyway, let's move on. $150 to $300. So here we care a lot more about snappy detent. Clip has no hotspots. A lot of these are just getting larger. The safety stuff is all there. The it looks cool is 72% of people said that instead of 50%. Titanium frame lock is definitely something that people are starting to expect at that price range. We still want thin blade stock. Here, the expectations for different types of materials go up. Anodized titanium, carbon fiber, micarta, exotic stuff like mammoth tooth and mother of pearl gold diamonds. I don't know if you can even 8% expect that at that price. I don't know if that's even realistic, but it's good to see that people actually took the time to go through this and answer honestly. For the responses, we'll do the same thing. So the normal like safety stuff at the top, notice snappy detent is working its way up. So this is at 82%. Expect action to be good. Looks cool. Took a huge jump. If you're spending that kind of money, you're not just getting a tool. You want something that you actually, aesthetically makes you happy, which is cool. Fine. It doesn't matter one way or another to me. What's the lowest here? It has a lanyard hole. You guys are audience after my own heart. Good job. Clip is a wire design. Yes. See, now I wouldn't mind a wire design on an expensive knife just because it's such a good one. I know it kind of seems a little bit cheap, but I guess I'm in the minority there. Next one. 300 to 450. Now, this price range is kind of a unique one. I feel like it's hard to differentiate your knife from this price bracket above, but also not, be compared to like a more expensive knife that's over $450. It's just kind of a weird place for a knife to exist. It's a weird combination of like, am I paying too much for a cheap knife that's just been dressed up fancier? Or am I getting like a crappy version of a more expensive custom knife? Like, where does that really belong? Let's go ahead and give a look down here. So people really don't like that clip, a wire clip. Lanyard hole, people do not need, people. See, proof is in the pudding. We don't care about this. At the very least, we don't want it to take precedence over the clip. So I hope there's some knife makers looking at this. Titanium frame lock. Everybody wants that at this price. Opening aperture, thumb stud, still doing well. Front flipper and back flipper are still pretty high up there. Even the top flipper. Interesting. Still want a thin knife. That's the vast majority of people. Thin over thick. And here we have a lot more expectations for the nicer stuff, right? Exotics jumped from like 8% to 44%. So, And we'll do descending. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so snappy detent is now the number one result at 90%. we care more about the snappy detent than we do about the safety of the knife. Looks cool is still hanging out like 5th or 6th on most of these lists. And then the bottom, we don't like lanyard holes, wired clips, or thickness behind the edge. Nail nick's doing pretty bad too. Backlock, that's gonna really negatively affect the action. 14% of clips is reversible. So there's the 9% of left-handers that answered that way, and then 5 people that are empathetic. That's interesting. And now we go to the $450 and up, so the really expensive stuff. Here we're still looking at snappy detent is the dominant. Bunch of safety stuff. Looks cool is down here. No lock stick. Here, hawk lock. People don't know what that is. It does not have a lanyard hole. It's pretty big. It has a lanyard hole. You got 2 people, 3% still clinging to the old ways. Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. You can stay. Okay. Please rank the reasons you watch YouTube knife reviews. Now, I kind of put this in there just to kind of get a read on why people actually watch knife YouTube channels. Not necessarily just mine, just any in general. And the number one result is the one that I would hope it to be, which is because I want to learn more about a knife before I make a purchase. When I'm doing my reviews, that's kind of where my headspace is at. I'm not necessarily trying to entertain you as much or, how to service it. Like, there's so much info out there to, like, how to take a knife apart. I might do something like that eventually, not on each individual knife. Nick's doing the Lord's work on that front, knife by knife. He's taking them all apart. But I think what we could do is kind of think about how do you figure out how to take a knife apart and not be afraid to do it, just like Nick does every time. So maybe a philosophy reason as to, how to fix knives or service them. So this is our number one, which is good because I find reviews entertaining. That's the second highest rated one. I think that's fair. I hope that you're entertained by my reviews, obviously, but that's not my number one priority, right? This is my number one priority. I think, there's certain knife channels that make this their priority and they do very well. As far as if you're looking to just get a lot of subs and that's like the reason you're doing it. That's not why I started my channel, really. So I feel good about still going for the practicality of just helping people decide whether to buy a knife or not. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see the actual numbers here. Not very many people put these as their top ones, but you could see the results here. Please rank your favorite types of knives. Now, point of this is to kind of just get a read on the audience, right? Like, I'm pretty outspoken against just like tactical for tactical sake. Like how many people actually need to stab people on the regular? I don't know. Probably not much. I don't think that I want to discourage you for considering tactical aspects of a knife too much, but I also want to help bring the hobby into like out of the taboo area of society. It's something that I don't want people to, raise an eyebrow and make the uncomfortable joke of, oh, you axe murderer, or, whatever else, whenever you bring up that you're into the knife hobby. And it's just kind of like, some people like that aspect of a hobby is that it is so exclusive and like, oh, you don't like what I like? Well, you could go kick rocks. I don't like that aspect of it. I want all the hobbies that I'm into to be pretty inclusive, not necessarily just from like a demographics standpoint, but just like a philosophy standpoint. I want people, even if they aren't gonna join the hobby, to at least respect the hobby. And I feel like overemphasizing tactical prevents us from getting there. So, kind of looking at the breakdown, EDC tactical is way too high for my taste, which is kind of a sad thing. Large tactical is still very, very, very large. So this means that, you could be liking these things in addition to the other areas that I'm more interested in. But I don't know. I guess what I'm asking is not that you don't like these things, but that you don't let it negatively affect the hobby, if that makes sense. EDC Gentleman, EDC Office, Utility, Action Showpieces, Budget Knives, like these are all more inviting to the hobby. Out the Front Autos, Bale Songs, like the two tactical ones and these two really kind of by nature alienate people a little bit. Or not even alienate people, but just give us a bad rap, I suppose. But it's good to see the numbers and know my audience. I don't want you to leave necessarily, but I am interested. Maybe comment below if you agree that even if you continue to like tactical stuff, that maybe how it's marketed from certain knife companies, could be hurting us on the whole. In which case, we need to give them feedback, right? Anyway, just a thought. Next, please rank your favorite blade shape. This one is also very interesting. Now, I have some positive things here. Daggers, recurves, Persian. These are all kind of unnecessary, I feel like, these three. And I'm glad that that's kind of reflected in the survey. I'm just not a huge fan. Those would definitely be my bottom three. I'm really surprised at how well Sheepsfoot and Wharncliffe are doing. I feel like, put those two together because they're very similar. Technically, I think a Sheepsfoot is a Wharncliffe, but whatever. This is really high. This is good. I mean, only Drop Point and Clip Point are even competing with these two, which is cool. That's interesting. Spear Point and Leaf Shape, I'm surprised they're kind of low. I thought these would be higher than the Sheepsfoot and Wharncliffe, but I don't know. Interesting. Tonto was a little bit higher than I would expect. I thought they would be maybe like 5 or 6, kind of like in this range, but interesting nonetheless. All right. Considering both performance and value, please rank your favorite steel types. Now, this one I think is a little bit of just a popularity contest, I feel like. I think these two deservedly are doing well. Just M390, 20CV, 204P, like they're so good. The price, there's so much demand that the supply has increased so much that the price is actually not too bad these days for knives that have these types of steels. I recently reviewed the Three Rivers Manufacturing Atom. It's a $200 knife with 20 CV, and it's just amazing. USA made too. Like, that's awesome. And so, price no object. Vanix is better than LC200N, but it's so much more rare and expensive and hard to find that I think we like LC200N better than that, just because it's more realistic and being able to get it. So those all make sense. Rex 121 is highly specialized. It's the best edge retention. I'm surprised it's this high because, I'm just asking for steel types. I'm not necessarily saying whether it's a fold or a fixed blade, but I don't know how practical a Rex 121 folder would be, but still, I mean, there's some interest in it there. S35VN and S30. These are not near as good, I think, as these two knives, but they're just everywhere, like S30V is the standard steel type for both Spyderco and Benchmade, I would say, is kind of their default steel. S35 obviously is all the Chris Reeve knives, which is nuts. And then you have kind of the premium 3 here. I see S90V, these are so similar. Yeah, I guess it's one vote difference, so that makes sense. Same with this. Yeah, those are all probably in the right spot, I would say. LMAX, RWL 34 should be a little bit lower. M4, I think, is the biggest surprise on this list. My impression is that people go crazy for M4, but I've always been a little bit annoyed with M4 just on how quickly it patinas, even when I am oiling the knife, cleaning the knife. It is kind of just impractical in terms of like a humid environment. Pocket knives, especially, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not alone on that. I think performance wise, it does great. It's just like the maintenance of it is kind of annoying. 4V kind of in the similar boat. Very good for fixed blades. It's not super common on a folder. There's that one pair 3 um, that I reviewed that was 4V, and I've heard people get that knife like HRC tested. It was like 66 HRC, so it was actually a really good example of 4V, but still kind of rare. I think this steel type needs to get more exposure. K390, I think, has potential to completely obliterate these two in terms of like the fixed blade, primary, and then secondary folder, just like really tough, excellent edge retention type steels. I think K390 is like strictly better than these two in pretty much every way. Obviously, it's not going to be as stainless as a lot of these other options, so it's not strictly better than any steel, but comparing it to these types. D2, it's just, that's probably the worst steel type on this list, but it's just so good for the value aspect. It shows up on the list and people reflect that. So that's interesting. All right, so that's the 10 questions. I'll briefly show this if you want to pause and break that down. You can, but thanks for taking the survey. If you took the survey, thanks for kind of going over the results with me. I think it's really interesting just to kind of go over this stuff, get a feel for what people like and don't like, and it'll help. It's always good to know your audience. I think this is also useful information for people making knives or designing knives or commissioning knives to be made. This will give you a little bit of context, small sample size, but still somewhere to start. I hope this was fun for you. I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!